Hello, my dear friends. Today I want to share a story that explains why reading is such an important habit in our lives. I know that sometimes picking up a book can feel like a chore, especially when there are so many distractions around us. But trust me, reading is like planting a tree that will one day give you shade, fruits, and flowers. It is a skill and a habit that shapes your mind, opens new worlds, and helps you grow as a person. Let me tell you about a boy named Ryan who discovered the magic of reading and how it completely transformed his life. This story is written in a simple way, so everyone can understand it, no matter where you're from or how much English you know. It's about a boy, his struggles, and his journey to becoming a passionate reader who understood the true value of knowledge. Reading isn't just about finishing books. It's about how stories, knowledge, and words connect with you. They teach you to think, feel, and dream beyond what you see. So sit back, relax, and join me as I take you through Ryan's story. The story. Hello, my name is Ryan, and I want to tell you something important, he began, sitting on the edge of his bed, addressing an imaginary audience. It had been a tough week, and Ryan felt overwhelmed with everything happening in his life. School was hard, his grades were slipping, and his parents were always worried about him. His friends seemed to have it all figured out, but Ryan, he felt lost. One evening, Ryan's father walked into his room, holding an old book. "Ryan," he said, "I think this might help you." The book was worn, its pages yellowed, but there was something inviting about it. The title read, "The Adventures of Tom Sawyer." "Why would I read this?" Ryan asked, frowning. His father smiled. "Just give it a try. You might find something interesting in there." Reluctantly, Ryan opened the book. At first, the words felt like a maze, and his mind wandered. But as he read on, something unexpected happened. The story began to draw him in. He could see the mischievous Tom Sawyer tricking his friends into painting a fence. He laughed, felt curious, and for the first time in weeks, forgot about his own problems. That night, Ryan read until his eyes grew heavy. When he closed the book, he felt lighter, as though he had traveled to another world and returned safely. Discovering the power of words. The next day at school, Ryan found himself thinking about Tom Sawyer during a dull math class. For the first time, he wondered, what other stories are out there? After school, he went to the library. It was quiet, with rows of shelves filled with books of all shapes and sizes. Ryan felt small in front of so much knowledge, but he also felt curious. "Can I help you find something?" the librarian asked kindly. I'm not sure," Ryan admitted. "I just finished a book, and I think I want to read more." The librarian smiled. "You've come to the right place." She handed him a book called Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. "Give this one a try. It's about magic and courage." Ryan devoured the book in 3 days. Each chapter felt like an adventure, and he couldn't wait to find out what happened next. A growing passion. Over the months, reading became a daily habit for Ryan. He read stories about space, history, fantasy worlds, and real-life heroes. Each book taught him something new. From novels, he learned about emotions, bravery, and imagination. From nonfiction books, he gained knowledge about science, the world, and even how to solve problems. His grades improved because he could now understand and analyze texts better. Even his teachers noticed the change. "You've become quite the reader, Ryan," his English teacher said one day. But it wasn't just school that changed. Ryan started seeing the world differently. He would notice small details, like the way sunlight filtered through trees, just like a description he had read in a book. He started asking more questions and having deeper conversations with his friends and family. Why reading matters. One day, Ryan's younger brother, Max, walked into his room. "Ryan, why are you always reading?" Max asked, frowning. Ryan put down his book and smiled. "Because reading helps me see the world in ways I couldn't before. It's like it gives you new eyes." Max looked skeptical. "How?" "Okay, think about this," Ryan said, pointing to his book. "Have you ever wondered what it's like to live in another country or another time? Books can take you there. They can teach you things you never knew, help you understand people better, and even inspire you to dream big." Max nodded slowly. "But what if I'm not good at reading?" "You don't have to be perfect," Ryan reassured him. "Start small. Pick something fun, like comics or short stories. The more you read, the better you'll get. And trust me, it's worth it." The magic of connection. Ryan's journey didn't stop there. As he grew older, reading became a part of his identity. He joined book clubs, shared his favorite stories with friends, and even started writing his own. Books were no longer just a hobby. They were a bridge to understanding the world and himself. Looking back, Ryan often thought about that first book his father gave him. It wasn't just a story about Tom Sawyer. It was the beginning of a journey that changed his life. Ryan's new chapter. As Ryan grew older, his love for reading only deepened. But it wasn't just about consuming books anymore. He started to wonder how he could share the magic of reading with others. One day, during a class discussion, his English teacher, Ms. Harper, asked the students a question that lit a spark in Ryan's mind. "What's one thing you've learned that you think everyone should know?" she asked, her eyes scanning the room. Ryan raised his hand, something he rarely did before books gave him confidence. "I've learned that reading isn't just about stories. It's about understanding people, the world, and even yourself." Ms. Harper smiled. "That's a powerful insight, Ryan. Would you like to elaborate?" Ryan hesitated, but took a deep breath. "When I read, I feel like I'm living 100 different lives. It's like I get to experience things I might never get to in real life. And the best part? It's made me more curious about everything around me." The room was quiet, his classmates absorbing his words. That moment planted a seed in Ryan's mind. Maybe he could inspire others to read too. The Library Club. The next week, Ryan approached Ms. Harper after class. "I was wondering, do you think the school would let me start a reading club?" Her face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. I'm sure the principal would approve. Let's work on a proposal together." A month later, the library club was officially launched. Ryan was nervous during the first meeting, expecting only a handful of students to show up. But to his surprise, nearly 20 kids filled the library, curious about what the club had to offer. "I'm not here to make you read boring textbooks," Ryan began, his voice steady. "I want us to explore books that make us laugh, cry, and think. Books that inspire us and connect us to the world. Let's start with something fun. Who here has heard of Percy Jackson?" Hands shot up, and soon the room buzzed with excitement as Ryan handed out copies of the book. They agreed to read the first 5 chapters and meet next week to discuss their favorite parts. A ripple effect. As the weeks went by, the club grew. Students who once thought reading was dull started discovering genres they loved: fantasy, mystery, science fiction, even poetry. Ryan noticed how books brought them together, breaking barriers between shy kids, sports stars, and academic achievers. One day, a girl named Lily, who rarely spoke in class, came up to Ryan. "I just wanted to say thank you," she murmured. "Before this club, I didn't think I was smart enough to read big books. But now, I can't stop. It's like they're my friends." Ryan grinned. "Books don't judge, Lily. They're there for everyone." A new dream. As Ryan approached graduation, he began to think about his future. He had always assumed he would follow a practical career path like engineering or business, but now he wasn't so sure. One afternoon, while flipping through a book about inspiring educators, he realized his calling. "I want to be a teacher," he told his parents at dinner. His mother blinked in surprise. "A teacher? Why?" "Because books changed my life," Ryan said, his voice firm. "And I want to help other kids discover that too." His father smiled, the same way he had the night he gave Ryan the adventures of Tom Sawyer. "If that's what you're passionate about, we'll support you." Spreading the joy of reading years. Later, Ryan stood in front of his first classroom, a group of wide-eyed 6th graders looking up at him. On the first day, he pulled out a stack of books and placed them on his desk. "These," he said, gesturing to the books, "are more than just paper and ink. They're keys to adventures, lessons, and friendships. And this year, I'm going to show you how they can change your life, just like they changed mine." He introduced a Story of the Month project, where each student chose a book to read and share with the class. Slowly but surely, even the most reluctant readers began to find stories they loved. One day, a boy named Ethan approached Ryan after class. "Mr. Carter," he said, holding up a dog-eared copy of The Hobbit, "I used to think books were boring, but now I think I want to be a writer someday." Ryan smiled, feeling a warmth he couldn't quite describe. "You can be anything you want, Ethan. And if you ever need inspiration, the library is always there." Years turned into decades, and Ryan's passion for reading and teaching never wavered. He became not just a teacher, but a mentor, a guide for countless students who found solace, inspiration, and courage in the stories he introduced them to. But Ryan's story didn't stop with the walls of his classroom. One day, a letter arrived at Ryan's home. It was handwritten, the envelope addressed in neat, careful script. Curious, Ryan opened it and began to read. "Dear Mr. Carter, you may not remember me, but I'll never forget you. My name is Ethan. Yes, the boy who wanted to be a writer. I'm writing to tell you that I finally did it. My first book has been published, and it's all because of you. When I doubted myself, you didn't. When I thought I couldn't, you told me I could. That meant everything to me. Thank you for being the kind of teacher who changes lives." Tears welled up in Ryan's eyes as he held the letter close. Ethan had included a copy of his book, its cover gleaming with pride. Ryan flipped to the dedication and saw his name there. "For Mr. Carter, the man who taught me that words can change the world." The power of sharing. Ethan's letter ignited something new in Ryan. He realized that while his classroom was a powerful space, there were countless others outside its walls who still needed to hear his message about the importance of reading. So Ryan decided to write his own book. It wasn't an easy process. Ryan spent months poring over his notes, writing and rewriting, doubting himself, and then pushing forward. He wanted the book to be more than just his story. It had to be a guide for others, a way to show them how reading could unlock potential they didn't even know they had. The book, titled The Reading Revolution: How Stories Shape Lives, was published the following year. It was a blend of personal anecdotes, stories from his students, and practical advice on how to make reading a habit. To Ryan's surprise, it resonated with people far beyond his small town. A global movement. Ryan's book became a bestseller, and soon he was invited to speak at conferences, schools, and libraries around the world. Everywhere he went, he met people who shared their own reading journeys with him. Parents who read to their children, teenagers who found courage in fantasy novels, and even adults who had rediscovered the joy of books later in life. One of Ryan's most memorable moments came during a trip to a small village in India. The children there had limited access to books, but their hunger for stories was palpable. Ryan partnered with local educators to start a community library, filling its shelves with books from different genres and languages. When the library opened, Ryan watched as the children's faces lit up, their fingers tracing the covers of books they'd never seen before. It reminded him of his first visit to the library all those years ago and the spark it had ignited in him. Passing the torch, Ryan retired from teaching after 4 decades, but his work was far from over. He spent his days volunteering at libraries, mentoring young writers, and even hosting a podcast called The Power of Stories. In every episode, he invited guests to share how reading had shaped their lives, from famous authors to everyday people with extraordinary tales. One day, a familiar face appeared on the podcast. Ethan, now a successful novelist with multiple bestsellers to his name. "Ryan," Ethan said, addressing him directly during the recording, "you didn't just teach me to love reading. You taught me to believe in myself. And because of that, I've tried to do the same for others." Ryan smiled, his heart full. "That's the beauty of reading, Ethan. It's not just a solitary act. It's something we can share, something that creates ripples far beyond what we can see." The legacy lives on. As Ryan looked back on his life, he realized that his journey with reading had been about so much more than just books. It was about connection, connecting with stories, with people, and with the world. Even in his final years, Ryan continued to read, often surrounded by his grandchildren, who loved listening to his animated storytelling. His favorite book remained The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, the one that had started it all. And when Ryan passed away peacefully at the age of 87, he left behind a legacy that would live on in the countless lives he had touched. His students, readers, and listeners carried his message forward. Books are more than stories, they're lifelines, guiding stars, and bridges to a better world. Hello, my dear friends. Continuing with Ryan's story and the journey of discovering the magic of reading, I want to share some genuine tips and tricks to help you understand and embrace the importance of reading in your life. These are not just theoretical ideas, but practical strategies that you can start using today. Each tip comes with detailed examples so you can see how they work in real life. 1. Start with what you love. Reading is much easier when it's something you enjoy. If you're not into heavy novels or academic texts, start with genres or topics that excite you. This makes reading feel less like a chore and more like a fun activity. Example: imagine you love sports. Instead of jumping into classic literature right away, pick up an autobiography of your favorite athlete. For instance, Ryan once recommended Open by Andre Agassi to a student who loved tennis. The student, Sam, wasn't a big reader, but he loved the raw, emotional journey Agassi described. Sam later said, "It didn't feel like I was reading. I felt like I was living his story." If you're into mysteries, start with short stories by authors like Agatha Christie or Arthur Conan Doyle. Over time, you'll naturally want to explore more. 2. Set a reading schedule. Consistency is key to making reading a habit. You don't need to dedicate hours. Even 10 to 15 minutes a day can make a huge difference. Example: Ryan suggested this to his reading club members. He asked them to read for just 10 minutes before bed every night. One of his students, Lily, started this routine. She began with Charlotte's Web and soon found herself reading for 30 minutes without realizing it. "It's like the book pulls you in," she said. By the end of the year, Lily had read 12 books. Tip: use your commute, lunch break, or waiting time to read. Carry a book or use an e-reader app on your phone. 3. Read aloud for better comprehension. Reading aloud can help you understand and remember the content better, especially if you're struggling with complex material or a new language. Example: when Ryan was mentoring Ethan, he noticed Ethan struggled with understanding Shakespeare. Ryan suggested reading aloud, acting out the lines like a play. Ethan found it not only improved his understanding, but also made it fun. He even started enjoying the rhythm and poetry of Shakespeare's language. This tip works for beginners learning English too. Read children's books aloud. They have simple language and engaging illustrations to help you grasp the story. 4. Join a book club or reading community. Reading becomes more meaningful when shared. Discussing books with others helps you see different perspectives and deepens your understanding. Example: remember Ryan's library club? One of the most popular discussions was about the Hunger Games. Different students interpreted Katniss's decisions in unique ways. Some admired her bravery, while others questioned her choices. These discussions sparked debates and allowed everyone to see the story in a new light. If you can't join a physical book club, online forums like Goodreads or Reddit's book communities are excellent alternatives. 5. Annotate and take notes. Interacting with the text helps you retain more information and develop critical thinking skills. Use a highlighter, jot down questions, or write your thoughts in the margins. Example: Ryan taught his students how to annotate by using To Kill a Mockingbird. They highlighted key themes like justice and empathy and wrote their reflections in the margins. For instance, one student, Maya, wrote, "Why does Atticus trust the system when it seems so broken?" This question led to a deeper classroom discussion. If you're reading for personal growth, keep a journal where you summarize chapters or note down quotes that resonate with you. 6. Experiment with different formats. Books come in various formats: physical, digital, and audiobooks. Explore them to find what works best for you. Example: Ryan had a student named Jake who said he didn't have time to read. Ryan suggested trying audiobooks during his gym sessions or while walking to school. Jake started with Harry Potter and soon realized he could read while staying active. Some people prefer e-readers because they're lightweight and let you adjust the font size. Experiment until you find your preference. 7. Set goals and track progress. Having a goal motivates you to keep going. It could be a certain number of books per month or trying a new genre. Example: Ryan's reading club participated in a reading challenge where they aimed to finish 20 books in a year. To keep track, they used a chart in the library. Each time someone finished a book, they added a sticker under their name. Seeing their progress visually motivated everyone to keep reading. For personal tracking, apps like Goodreads let you set reading goals and even share reviews. 8. Create a comfortable reading environment. The right setting can make a big difference in how much you enjoy reading. Find a quiet spot, good lighting, and a comfy chair. Example: Ryan's favorite reading spot as a teenager was under a tree in his backyard. He always said the fresh air and sunlight made the stories feel more alive. Similarly, one of his students created a reading nook in her room with pillows, fairy lights, and a shelf of her favorite books. If you're busy, find a spot where you won't be disturbed, like a cozy corner in a coffee shop or a quiet room in your house. 9. Reflect on what you've read. After finishing a book, take a moment to think about it. What did you learn? Did it change your perspective? Example: After reading The Book Thief, one of Ryan's students, Alex, wrote a letter to the author, Marcus Zusak, explaining how the book made him appreciate his grandparents' stories about World War II. Alex later said that reflecting on the book helped him connect it to his own life in a meaningful way. You don't have to write letters. Simple journaling or talking about the book with a friend can be just as impactful. 10. Don't force it. Take breaks when needed. Reading should be enjoyable, not stressful. If you're not in the mood, it's okay to take a break or switch to a lighter book. Example: Ryan once tried to read War and Peace, but found it overwhelming. Instead of pushing through and hating it, he put it aside and picked up The Alchemist. Months later, he returned to War and Peace with a fresh mindset and appreciated it much more. The key is to listen to yourself and remember that reading is a journey, not a race. The power of sharing. What you read. One of the most underrated aspects of reading is sharing your thoughts and insights with others. When Ryan first started his journey as a mentor, He realized that discussing books opened up deeper understanding, not just for him, but for his students too. For example, after reading 1984 by George Orwell, Ryan led a discussion with his group. At first, most students thought it was just a dystopian novel, but as they shared their interpretations, they began to see the relevance of the book in modern times, issues like surveillance and freedom of expression. Ryan always emphasized, when you talk about a book, you're not just sharing, you're learning from others' perspectives. How you can do this. Start by discussing books with friends or family. For instance, if you've read a motivational book like Atomic Habits, share one habit-building tip you learned and how it's helped you. If you're shy about face-to-face discussions, try writing short reviews online. Many platforms welcome beginner reviewers. Make reading a social bond. Ryan once shared how reading brought him closer to his younger brother, Leo. Leo struggled in school and often felt left out. One summer, Ryan introduced him to graphic novels like Percy Jackson and the Olympians in comic form. They would sit together, read a chapter, and then act out scenes. Over time, Leo's interest grew, and he began reading the full novels on his own. Ryan said, "It wasn't just about reading, it was about bonding." Books became our shared language. How you can do this. If you have a sibling, child, or friend who isn't into reading, start with interactive formats like audiobooks or graphic novels. Organize a small book club in your family. Even reading one short story together can spark meaningful conversations. Use reading as a tool for self-improvement. Ryan always believed that books were his greatest teachers. Whenever he faced challenges, he turned to reading for guidance. For example, when Ryan was preparing for a public speaking competition, he read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. He didn't just read it passively, he applied the techniques like maintaining eye contact and genuinely listening to others. These small changes boosted his confidence and eventually led him to win the competition. How you can do this. Identify areas you want to improve, whether it's communication, leadership, or even cooking, and find books that can guide you. Take notes while reading and apply one lesson at a time. For instance, if you're reading a book on mindfulness, start with just 5 minutes of meditation daily. Read to escape and recharge. Life can be overwhelming, and reading offers a perfect escape. Ryan often shared how books helped him through tough times. After a particularly stressful period at work, he picked up The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. The vivid world of Middle-earth transported him away from his worries and gave him a sense of peace. He told his students, "Sometimes, a story is all you need to remind yourself that life is full of adventures waiting to be discovered." How you can do this. Choose books that match your mood. If you're feeling low, try uplifting stories like The Little Prince. If you're seeking adventure, dive into fantasy novels like Harry Potter. Pair your reading with a calming ritual. Light a candle, make tea, and allow yourself to be fully immersed in the story. Practical application. Ryan's reading routine. To tie everything together, Ryan often shared his personal reading routine as an example for those struggling to make time for books. Morning motivation. Ryan started his day with a short, inspiring passage. He kept books like The Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday on his bedside table. "It sets the tone for my day," he explained. Afternoon learning. During lunch breaks, he read nonfiction to learn something new, like Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Evening escape. Before bed, he read novels or poetry to relax. His favorites included Pride and Prejudice and Collections by Rumi. Example in action. The story of Mia. Let's return to Ryan's reading club to illustrate how these tips helped a real student. Mia was a quiet, reserved girl who avoided group activities. When Ryan introduced her to Anne of Green Gables, she connected deeply with Anne's imaginative and misunderstood character. As Mia read more, she began sharing her thoughts during discussions. She said, "I used to think I was weird for dreaming so much, but Anne showed me it's okay to be yourself." Inspired, Mia started writing her own short stories. By the end of the year, she had written a 50-page story that she shared with the club. Ryan proudly said, "Books didn't just help Mia read, they helped her find her voice." Books as lifelong companions. Ryan shared a personal moment to inspire his listeners further. "I want to tell you about my grandfather. He wasn't a highly educated man, he didn't go to college, but he had a habit of reading a chapter from a book every night. His collection wasn't huge, just a handful of classics, a Bible, and a few local history books. One day, when I was about 10 years old, I asked him, 'Grandpa, why do you always read? You already know all this stuff.' He smiled and said something I'll never forget. 'Ryan, books don't just teach you things, they remind you of who you are and who you can be.' He explained that as life changes, the same book can teach you something new. He showed me his old, tattered copy of To Kill a Mockingbird. The first time he read it, he saw it as a story about justice. The second time, years later, he saw it as a lesson in empathy. And when he read it again in his older years, it reminded him of the innocence and kindness we often overlook in our daily lives. Revisiting books. A practical example. Ryan encouraged his group, "If you've ever read a book in school and thought it was boring, try reading it again now. You might be surprised how much you missed the first time." He gave an example of Mia, the shy girl from his reading club. After gaining confidence, Mia decided to reread Charlotte's Web. As a child, she remembered it as a story about a pig and a spider. But this time, she realized it was about friendship, sacrifice, and the beauty of ordinary life. Mia later told Ryan, "It's like I grew up with the book, and now it speaks to a different part of me." Takeaway tip. Choose a book you read in your younger years, like a classic from high school. Reflect on how its meaning changes for you now. Expanding horizons through diverse reading. Another powerful point Ryan made was about the importance of reading books from different cultures, genres, and perspectives. He explained, "When you read stories from other cultures, you begin to understand how others see the world. It's like traveling without leaving your chair." He shared how reading Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe opened his eyes to African traditions and the impact of colonialism. Similarly, reading The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini gave him a deep appreciation for Afghan history and the human cost of war. How you can do this. Start with a genre or author you've never tried. If you usually read romance, try historical fiction. If you're into fantasy, explore memoirs. Look for book recommendations from global authors or communities. Libraries and online forums are great resources for discovering new perspectives. The Habit of Reading, Ryan's Step-by-Step Guide. Ryan realized that for many people, the biggest challenge wasn't finding books, it was making time to read. So he developed a step-by-step guide to build the habit. Start small. Begin with 5 to 10 minutes a day. You don't have to read for hours. Even a single page can make a difference. Set a goal. Ryan advised setting realistic goals, like reading one book a month. It's not about speed, he said. It's about consistency. Create a reading space. Whether it's a cozy corner of your room or a spot in the park, having a designated reading space helps you associate the place with the joy of reading. Use audiobooks. For busy days, Ryan recommended audiobooks. You can listen while commuting, exercising, or even cooking. It's reading for your ears. Track your progress. Ryan shared how he kept a simple journal to jot down what he learned or enjoyed about each book. It's motivating to see how much you've grown over time. The transformative power of stories. An example. One day, a new member joined Ryan's reading group, a young boy named Sam who struggled with anxiety. He was hesitant at first, but Ryan suggested starting with Wonder by R.J. Palacio, a heartfelt story about a boy with facial differences navigating school life. Sam was deeply moved. He said, "It felt like the book was talking to me. Augie's bravery made me want to be braver too." Inspired, Sam started reading more and even began writing his own short stories about overcoming challenges. Ryan smiled as he shared this memory with his group, saying, "That's the magic of stories. They don't just entertain, they empower." Books as mirrors and windows. Ryan leaned forward and said, "Let me tell you one last thing that has always stayed with me. Books can be mirrors, and they can be windows. They can show you yourself, and they can let you see into someone else's world." He explained, "When I read The Catcher in the Rye as a teenager, I saw myself in Holden Caulfield, angry, confused, trying to figure out the world. It was a mirror. But when I read The Color Purple by Alice Walker later in life, it became a window into struggles I'd never experienced but deeply empathized with." He gestured to the group. "Think about the last book you read. Was it a mirror or a window? Did it help you understand yourself better, or did it open your eyes to something beyond your experience?" Making reading a journey, not a task. Ryan noticed that many people approach reading as a chore, especially in the age of screens and endless distractions. He said, "We've all been there, starting a book and leaving it halfway because something else grabbed our attention. But reading isn't a task to check off a list, it's a journey to enjoy." He shared a personal story. During his college years, he took up War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. "I won't lie," he chuckled. "It took me months. I read it in short bursts, sometimes putting it down for weeks. But every time I returned to it, I found something new, something profound. By the end, it felt like I had lived 100 lives within those pages." How to enjoy the journey. Pick books that resonate with your current mood or stage in life. If you're feeling adventurous, try epic tales like The Lord of the Rings. If you want something comforting, choose lighthearted reads like Anne of Green Gables. Don't rush. It's okay to read at your own pace, even if it takes you a year to finish a single book. Examples of practical applications of reading. Ryan moved into actionable advice, using relatable examples from his group to illustrate how reading benefits daily life. 1. Building vocabulary and communication skills. He recalled how Sam, the boy with anxiety, grew more confident in speaking after reading Wonder. Sam would jot down words he found interesting and try to use them in conversations. Before long, he wasn't just reading, he was speaking like the characters he admired. How you can do this. Keep a small notebook or use your phone to note down new words. For example, if you read Pride and Prejudice, you might learn words like amiable or ardent. Practice using these words in your daily conversations. 2. Developing empathy. Ryan told them about Lisa, another member of the group, who had trouble connecting with people at work. After reading The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank, Lisa found herself deeply moved by the resilience of a girl in unimaginable circumstances. She told me, "It made me realize that everyone has a story, even if they don't share it." Lisa began approaching her colleagues with more understanding, and her relationships improved. How you can do this. Choose books that explore different lives and struggles. Memoirs like Educated by Tara Westover or Becoming by Michelle Obama are great places to start. Reflect on what the characters might teach you about your own interactions with people. 3. Solving real-life problems. Ryan shared his own example of learning financial discipline through books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. "I wasn't great with money in my early 20s, but that book taught me how to think about assets and liabilities. It changed the way I managed my finances." How you can do this. Identify areas in your life where you need guidance, relationships, career, health, and find books tailored to those topics.